Hi everyone, welcome to the KidsMatter Essentials webinar. Tonight is all about bringing KidsMatter to your place. So we're going to look at everything you need to know about KidsMatter to get started and give you a few tips for making it happen as well. So just a couple of housekeeping things before we get underway. Remember to pop all your questions, comments in the chat to the left of your screen, and we'll endeavour to answer those for you. And the other thing as well is just a quick word about certificates. We will be sending out a certificate within about a week of the event, so thank you for attending tonight. Now, in a moment, I'll be joined by Rita Johnston, and I just want to acknowledge that we've got another member of our team in the chat who will be answering some of your questions as well, who is Janelle. So, Rita, would you like to come to the screen and do an acknowledgement of country for us? Hi, Rita.
Hi, Amelia, and hello to everyone who's attending today. We have a beautiful, quite small and intimate group, so it should be a great little webinar where we'll probably be able to give you a bit more personalised attention than we sometimes can when there's so many people attending. So I want to start by acknowledging the country, the traditional custodians of the land where I sit, who are the Gadigal and the Bidigal people of the Eora Nation, and I want to pay my respects to elders past, present and future. For it's these elders that really, they hold all the memories and the traditions and the hopes for the future for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And it would be great if you could also let us know where you are and who are the traditional owners of the land where you are seated right now. And I also want to acknowledge that the incredibly strong connection and commitment to land, to family and to children, that's an essential part of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, and what a big contribution this can make to all of our lives in this present day.
Thanks, Rita. Yes, I'm on Ghana country as well, so I'm a little bit further away from you. I'm not sure what everyone's popping in the chat yet. I'd also like to acknowledge how much we've been able to draw on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives and pedagogy as we've developed our resources at KidsMatter, but also it strengthens the work that we do with educators in supporting them across the sector to grow healthy minds. So now we're going to move on to everything you need to know by asking you a few questions about you. We're going to pop a poll up. We're really interested to know about what role you have at your place. So are you an educator or a teacher, in a leadership role, a parent, and all the rest of the list? I won't read them all out to you tonight. So we generally get a good mix of people across the board. We've got some parents here tonight, which is fantastic, and educators and teachers form the main element of that. So we'll stop the poll. Oh, something else. Someone's telling us in the chat, so we'll check that out shortly as well. Now, there's another quick question as well that we've got for you. We'd like to know why you decided to register for today's event. So there's lots of different reasons why people like to attend. Sometimes someone knows a lot about KidsMatter and they're really keen to get started. Sometimes they want to know more about the different information. Sometimes people are asked to attend by other people. Rita, are there any particular reasons that strike you?
Well, usually in my experience, people look towards something like KidsMatter when they find they're not able to respond effectively to children's behaviour, and they start to feel stretched and want more knowledge about early childhood mental health. So that's sort of the key motivator initially. And then when people hear about KidsMatter, then of course they want to know what it is and how it works and how it's going to help them, which is what we're going to share for the rest of our time together.
Definitely. Excellent. And if anyone wants to know here's some more reasons why educators and services and schools choose to participate in KidsMatter, check out one of our most recent webinars, our KidsMatter Days, because that's got a great mix of, I think, 4 educators who are talking about the reasons why they started KidsMatter and the things that they were doing as a result of it as well. So let's get into everything you need to know. So today we've broken today up really into 3 key areas. There's relationships that you need to know about, there's some facts about Kids Matter, and there's some different approaches that you can take to actually make Kids Matter happen in your place in the best way possible for the people in the community and children within your service or school. So Rita, do you want to talk a little bit about relationships for me?
So I'm sure many of you already know that all the recent research, particularly over the last 10 years or more, but all the recent research is showing us really that relationships are at the very, very heart of early childhood development. Without relationships, children's brains don't grow, children don't learn, and children don't flourish. And in fact, without relationships, none of us really grow and flourish. And so, so relationships are at the heart of Kids Matter in the same way as they're at the heart of the early years learning framework. And what we look at in Kids Matter is we look at all the relationships that are happening in your service. We look at the relationships between children and children, between children and educators, between educators and educators, between educators and families, and between families and other families. And we look at the way we can build more positive relationships with all of the people in the service, and also with the local community and extended community. And, the evidence shows that when we feel like we're a part of the community, we're a part of a relationship, and we're accepted and we feel safe and that we belong, it shows that this is one of the simplest ways we can support mental health and wellbeing in all of our communities. So relationships are the heart.
Definitely. And I'm sure we'll be able to touch throughout the remainder of the webinar ways that relationships really are important, and it will be highlighted through all this information that we're about to share with you. So there's some facts about Kids Matter. Kids Matter Early Childhood is actually a funded initiative, so that means to participate in the professional learning and to have the support from our team as a coach, mentor, that facilitator for the professional learning, there's actually no cost that you need to pay to Kids Matter to participate. There are some costs in that you have to purchase your downloads, your internet data, those sort of things, and time as well can be a cost that services sometimes need to factor in. But Kids Matter is funded by the Department of Health and Beyond Blue, and we work in partnership with Beyond Blue, the Australian Psychological Society, and Rita and I are both part of Early Childhood Australia. Rita, do you want to talk a little bit more about costs, particularly in terms of time?
Yeah, basically, as Amelia said, Kids Matter is completely free. It's government funded, but it takes some time to do the professional learning, and as we know, time is worth money. Some services already have time within their schedule. They already might have regular staff meetings, and so they can allocate some of that time to the professional learning. Some services need to find some additional time and maybe approach management or work with their management in getting some extra funding for release time for educators, and that might be extra time for an extra staff meeting. But in some services, what they've done is hired a casual for a day, and then educators can go off in pairs to do the professional learning. So there's different ways to fund that time. We can also fund that time by moving housekeeping out of our staff meetings and putting housekeeping in a closed Facebook group, for example. That's what one service does, or through emails, and then getting more time in our staff meetings for the professional learning for Kids Matter, and in fact other professional learning that you might want to do as well. And services have found incredibly creative ways to find that time. But yeah, so really the thing that you will need is some time to do the professional learning.
Yeah, definitely. And as far as other costs go, I mentioned that there's internet connection. You will need to have some sort of online device. So that could be a computer that has a webcam and a mic, but you can actually be connected via your mobile device as well. And I can see there's a couple of people who've connected tonight, either from an iPad or a mobile. So there's always a way to work around the cost. and to minimise them. It's something the KidsMatter team is happy to help you troubleshoot and problem solve some creative solutions for minimising any extra costs that you have. So the other fact about KidsMatter is that it's online. You have professional learning topics available and resources that you can use to guide your learning. And you can also connect with us completely online as well. So that can be via email or video conference or in a webinar situation like we are tonight. So that's it for that element of the facts, the costs and the IT stuff. Now we've actually got some information around the evidence that supports KidsMatter Early Childhood, because KidsMatter Early Childhood is developed from a strong evidence base. Essentially, there's two models underpinning everything that you will learn about and everything that you will do, and they're up on the screen now. The first model is the risk and protective factors model, and within this, it identifies that there are certain things that we can do as adults that are important adults in a young child's life to promote their well-being, to protect their mental health. And there are certain things in a young child's life that may occur that put their mental health at risk. So we look at, as early childhood educators in schools and in early childhood services, what things can we do that increases the number of protective factors that are in a young child's life? Because by addressing those areas and building on those protective factors, we can actually reduce the risk to mental health. So some of those risks that occur. One thing with this model that's really important to remember, that if a risk factor is present in a young child's mind, young child's life, it doesn't mean that they will actually develop a mental health difficulty or have a concern. It just increases the risk. The other model as well is Bronfenbrenner's socio-ecological model. So that's showing, indicating, you can see the child sitting there in the centre of all the circles. It shows, again, that word relationship. It shows how children grow up in relationship with others. They grow up in relationship with their culture, with systems, and each of those things has an influence. And you can see early childhood education and care settings sitting there as well, and they are a significant influence on a young child's life. So from your very first Getting Started, Ready, Set, Go KidsMatter event, so this is the event you'll attend after coming to the Essentials to get your professional learning underway. These two models will be drawn on repeatedly as you undertake the professional learning and also as you implement any changes at your place as a result of that learning. Rita, can you explain a little bit more about the professional learning that KidsMatter has and how it's been created based on these frameworks?
Yeah. So basically what we want to do for all children is to increase those things that will protect them against mental health difficulties or that will support them in having good mental health. While at the same time seeing the child in the context of their family, the early childhood setting, their community and the wider social scene. And so you can see this diagram now with the three circles in the middle and the circle around the outside. So this is the KidsMatter framework made up of 4 components or 4 elements, which basically what this framework does is it will show you and your educators what you need to do, what you need to know and what you need to do, as I said, to increase those protective factors within that context that the child finds themselves in. So the first component is that red pink circle around the outside called creating a sense of community. And the evidence shows that, as I said earlier, when we feel like we belong, when we feel safe, when we're a part of a community, when we're in relationship, then that's a protective factor that supports mental health and wellbeing. And it's actually a really simple way to support mental health and wellbeing. So that's really where we start, and that's the foundation of the KidsMatter framework. And then the other 3 circles in the middle build on this. So once again, the evidence shows us that children who have good social emotional skills are more likely to have good mental health. Families who are working in collaborative partnership with early childhood educators and are better able to support families will have better outcomes for children. And when we can identify children quickly as having difficulties and refer them effectively, that also leads to better outcomes for children. So these 4 components or 4 elements of KidsMatter will give you the knowledge and the practice base to actually increase all these protective factors in your early childhood setting. And what we found was when educators have been implementing KidsMatter, it has a powerful impact on early childhood services. I've seen and I've heard educators say, they feel more confident in working with mental health difficulties, in responding to them. They're more effective in their responses. They understand children's behaviour better. They understand the causes of behaviour better. They're more patient. And educators are able to build a lot of their own strategies instead of always looking for the outside expert. In services where they've implemented KidsMatter, children have improved their mental health and wellbeing without any outside experts coming in, and that's a really important thing to know. And then again, those children who do need the outside support have been able to be connected with that quickly and effectively. Basically, the services that I worked with when they've been working with KidsMatter for a period of time, say 9 months, when I go there, you can feel they feel more calm, more relaxed. Everyone's more settled and much happier. And I have a great little story about a new director who started with one of my KidsMatter services. And the first time I spoke to her, I said, what do you think about KidsMatter? She said, well, I noticed something was really different as soon as I came to the service. The children were so calm. Everyone was really, really relaxed and happy. And really, that is what happens when you implement that KidsMatter framework.
Yes. Thanks, Rita. You pretty well summed up what the aims of KidsMatter are, because the aims of KidsMatter are around building and improving educator capacity to respond to the needs of mental health needs of children. It's also to help improve overall mental health and wellbeing of children. It's to reduce mental health problems amongst children and to achieve greater support for children when they're experiencing mental health difficulties in their families. So that story you just gave just pretty well summed up all the aims of KidsMatter and showed how they're being achieved. And it also improves the network. An aim of KidsMatter is to improve the network of those working relationships as well. The other thing that I think is really important to know about KidsMatter professional learning and the framework in itself is that it integrates really easily with other frameworks and programs, and it crosses over, and you can use it to guide or inform other state or local initiatives that you might be implementing in your place as well. So there's 2 key frameworks that come to my mind are the National Quality Standard and the Early Youth Learning Framework. So is there anything you'd like to add as far as that goes, Rita?
Well, one of the things that we noticed in the pilot, which was in the very early stages of the Early Youth Learning Framework, was that the services who were implementing KidsMatter found it really easy to come to grips with the Early Years Learning Framework. And I've also heard educators say that once they've done KidsMatter, the Early Years Learning Framework just makes more sense. And the third sort of story is that many services have been able to increase their assessment and rating through the use of the KidsMatter framework. And they just are also always so excited about that.
Yes. Yeah, we've had some great success stories around that as well. And I've often heard you describe KidsMatter as being like an umbrella. Do you want to unpack that a little bit for us?
That's right. And it's often when we think of doing something, we think we're going to be doing something extra. Oh, we're doing, this 1, 2, 3, all these different things, and now we're going to be doing something extra. What KidsMatter is, it's really an umbrella or a framework or a house or whatever you want to call it, and everything else fits inside or underneath that. So you might be doing, some sort of program with your kids, or you might be doing something with the families, or you might be doing Munch and Move. And what happens is all those different things that you're already doing fit under the KidsMatter umbrella, but it pulls them all together so that they start to form a part of the cohesive whole. It's not like we're doing, 5 separate programs. We're doing KidsMatter, and the way we implement KidsMatter is through these 5 strategies, which might look like Munch and Move. It might look like some extra training for staff around social emotional skills. It could look like anything that you have happening in your service. And so while there is a bit of extra professional learning, it's not actually extra implementation, if you can understand what I'm saying. Mostly what happens is that it brings the mental health lens to what we're already doing. So, so we say good morning to children because it's good manners, because our director told us to, because we think it's fun and we like doing it, whatever reason. But when we understand that every time we say good morning to a child, it's actually building their physical brain, it's building their mental health for the rest of their lives, not just for tomorrow. Then we say that good morning much more intentionally, which with much more heart and much more connection, and it is more impactful. So you're still spending 30 seconds saying good morning, but all of a sudden that 30 seconds is actually having a lot more impact on that child's life. And there's really an infinite number of examples of where the KidsMatter, just, like the yeast in the bread, it brings our current practice to life in terms of how it supports children's mental health and well-being.
That's a great metaphor. Thanks, Rita. And I guess what you're saying, I can see how that works really well to enforce that notion of the whole of stepping or whole of school or whole of service approach to well-being, because particularly if you take a school, for example, you might have different age groups focusing in different ways on mental health and well-being, but KidsMatter can be almost like the glue that pulls all that together and synthesises it and integrates it. So one of the first steps, if you're keen to get underway with KidsMatter, is to really look at all the different professional learning resources that are available on our website. It's a bit of an adventure to see where you might end up. So continuous learning and improvement is a key element of KidsMatter early childhood, and the process can actually be tailored in ways that educators can direct their learning into areas of interest, areas of need, areas of strength even, and that can be done on an individual, a team or a community level. So Rita, you've talked a little bit about some of the connections that you can make by creating KidsMatter professional learning into everyday life and other initiatives. Is there anything else you'd like to add in terms of the continuous improvement process?
It really is a plan, do, review process, and it's really quite simple. Sometimes it's so simple, educators try and make it more complicated, but we learn a little bit through the professional learning. We watch a video, we read something. So we learn some information from KidsMatter. We look at what we already do, and I sort of talked about an example of that. We already say good morning to children. And we look at and we might think about how we can add some value to what we already do because of the learning that we've had. And that's usually a long list. What we already do is usually quite a long list. We're already doing pretty good practice. And then we look at what else can we do. And that could be a really small thing, like recently one of the services, a rather large service, decided that one of their action plans for the component one was that they would, the educators would say good morning to every parent they came across, not just the parents of the children that were in their group. So that's a small change that had quite a big impact. Another service looked around and saw that, they had this sort of purple and green check mural thing on the wall, and they realised that this wasn't really supporting the children's sort of calm, concentrated state, and so they decided they needed to have their service repainted. That was a part of their KidsMatter action plan. How you do your nappy change routine can be a part of your KidsMatter plan. So really anything you do within your service can and will be a part of your KidsMatter plan. And in fact, KidsMatter can impact all sorts of things in your service. An example I heard of recently is a colleague was at a service in the babies room, and the relationships with the babies and the educators were pretty good. They were going well, but there was a lot of organisational stuff that was disjointed and interrupting those relationships. So if you were using the KidsMatter framework, you would look at some organisational things that are disrupting relationships. You wouldn't just say, oh, yes, we've got good relationships. You'd make an action plan around those organisational things.
Excellent.
Is there anything I've left out, Amelia? I have to ask you.
No. I think you've covered lots of things. And remember that there are so many ways that KidsMatter. We could probably talk for a week about all the different ways, the connections that you can make. So remember to pop any comments or questions that you've got in the chat, or email us after the webinar as well if something pops up into your mind too. So let's look at we talked about how flexible KidsMatter early childhood can be in how you approach professional learning and even what you learn about. So we're going to explore 5 different potential approaches that you might choose to take when you commence with your KidsMatter journey. It's important to remember that there's no one way that is better than another. The best way is the way that works best for your place, in essence. And you can actually start and swap different approaches. You can mix them up. You can do all sorts of things. And that's why we have a KidsMatter facilitator to support you along the way as well. So the first of these approaches is the linear 16 topic approach. So up here we've got around the black of the black part of the screen shows all the different resources that are available to you to access to undertake any of that professional learning. But they're particularly relevant for the 16 topic linear approach as well. Rita, would you like to discuss a little bit more about how the insights of this linear 16 topics approach works?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Amelia. So remember earlier on we had the framework model, which had the pink circle around the outside and the coloured circles in the middle. Well, this is basically another way of looking at that. So there's 4 topics, 4 components. Sorry, get my words right. 4 components, and each component has 4 topics, and so that's why we call it the linear 16 topic approach. So, and initially, of course, in KidsMatter, we started at the first component and progressed through to the 4th component. And many services still approach the KidsMatter professional learning this way. So they start with creating a sense of community, component 1, topic 1, video 1, and they just work through the 4 components in a systematic way. And they find that works really well for them, and they feel, that they know where they're going and it's organised, and it's great. It's a great way to go.
Thanks, Rita. And then the second approach that we had up was the 8-in-1 year approach. And this is based on the 16 linear topics, but it actually reduces the 16 topics to an initial 8 topics. So we've mapped out some of the foundational topics that you might like to focus on in the first year. And then beyond that, step off and leap off into the remaining 8 topics that form the whole professional learning system. And you might choose to step off depending on areas of interest, areas of need, or following a linear progression once you've completed the 8-in-1 year approach. So you'll see here that there's all the variety of different colours. That indicates that every component of the KidsMatter framework, creating a sense of community, developing children's social and emotional skills, working with parents and carers, and helping children experiencing mental health difficulties, all those components will be a focus at some point throughout the first year. This approach we're finding is useful in informing and demonstrating your national quality standard requirements. We focus quite significantly on the learning outcomes and some key indicators for what they are. And it really does give you an opportunity to cover all the components in 1 year and progress through each of the topics by shifting focus regularly. So you might not feel like you've completed everything to start off with, but you look at it from a different point of view by looking at a different topic. So that's the 8-in-1 year approach. Then this is another one that you can do entirely as a KidsMatter Ways approach, or you can use it to embed into your learning with other approaches that you take up. Rita, do you want to talk a bit more about the KidsMatter Ways?
So the KidsMatter Ways were designed to take us a little bit away from the very dense print dense material that we had, and also a way of embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander ways of knowing, being and doing into the framework. So we've got a great ebook called Learning on Country, What Do You Know, which is a fantastic introduction to the KidsMatter Ways material resources, and also some great hints and tips on how to approach Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander ways of knowing, being and doing within your service. We've got action charts which have got a photo on the front and some text on the front, and then it's got some reflective questions and a little bit of content on the back. And you can also put your own photo and your own language on the front of those action charts. And they connect up very fairly strongly with the 4 components. We've got a fantastic series of podcasts. So they're audio resources covering all the KidsMatter professional learning material, ideas, and they're people from around Australia who educators, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and families all talking about KidsMatter and their KidsMatter journey. And then we've got the KidsMatter Way symbols, which is symbols that we've used, and you can see one of them on this page that we as the KidsMatter team created to really to highlight and reflect in an image form some of the key concepts in KidsMatter. And you can use these KidsMatter Ways resources in any way to support all the professional learning that you're doing.
Excellent, thank you, Rita. Yes, the Learn Many Ways really does mean what it says when it comes to KidsMatter, doesn't it? There are so many different ways that you can learn. Another approach is the school-based service pathways approach. So this is a document, it's an e-book that's been created by KidsMatter Early Childhood that takes specific steps to integrate KidsMatter Early Childhood and the KidsMatter Primary Professional Learning. And by doing this, if you're an educator based in a school, early childhood, you're an early childhood educator or you're an educator who works with older children, by integrating these, it really does reflect a true whole of school approach, which is a core principle of KidsMatter. There are lots of ways that early childhood services in schools can actually do the integration. This book highlights some key ways if people are undertaking KidsMatter primary professional learning in the first instance, and it highlights the important KidsMatter early childhood sections of our professional learning that would be important to look at as well as the team. There are other ways to do it though as well, in that some services and schools choose to start with KidsMatter early childhood and then use appropriate KidsMatter primary resources as available. So again, that's something that a facilitator can help support you in making that decision and also direct you in ways about which resources are best to access. There are some benefits in using this approach if you are a school-based school service. It immediately increases your connections between colleagues and community across the entire site. It can also make the needs of children under the age of 5 who are attending schools much more visible. It provides essential knowledge about early childhood mental health to all the educators across the board as well. So that's a benefit in that educators are more aware of what developmental stages, what mental health is, how mental health may have been influenced earlier in life could be impacting or influencing how a child is behaving or what things that they're demonstrating at any certain point of time as well. Another great part of that is that educators are potentially more able to enhance a child's wellbeing by supporting the family, no matter what the child's age is as well. So in essence, this document can actually support an entire community to achieve an understanding and support children's mental health across all the ages. Then we've got a pick and choose approach, the choose your own topics approach. Rita, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I really enjoy this approach because it's always different. So what some services have found most useful is to actually match the KidsMatter topics with what their current interest is. So or what's in their QIP, for example. So, I had one service that their quality improvement plans for this year, they were focusing on families. And so we decided it would be a good idea for them to work with component 3, which is working with parents and carers. I have had many other services who wanted to jump right into focusing on children's social and emotional skill development. And so they've started with component 2, children's social and emotional skills. I've had a couple of services who were really grappling with some children with difficulties, connection to child protection services, to really high-charged issues around children's mental health. So they decided to start with component 4, with some of the topics in component 4 about supporting children with difficulties. So really, as Amelia said, you can take any approach to work through the professional learning in KidsMatter. And so in some ways they're all pick and choose approaches, but this one is specifically named that.
Yeah. So Rita, if someone starts, say, at helping children who are experiencing mental health difficulties, which is component 4, where do they often head next?
This particular service headed to component 2, which was children's social emotional skills that I'm thinking of. So I don't think there's if you're following your own needs, then you don't know where you're heading until you get there, because when you finish that component, it's like, well, what's going on now? So it's very responsive to the needs of the children, the needs of the families, needs of the educators, the needs of the whole service.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So that's a brief summary of the different approaches that you can use when you commence with KidsMatter Early Childhood. Now, Rita and I are going to discuss a few tips for making it happen. So remembering that KidsMatter Early Childhood is a continuous improvement and professional learning process. It also goes hand in hand with change as a result of this. So starting with KidsMatter does also give you space to think about your team and how your team responds to change, their needs, their interests and their strengths. So one step in responding to change and supporting change is understanding that everyone responds to it differently. So let's do a poll. Just consider your team in general and how do you and members of your team respond to change. Now, this is a multiple choice, so you feel free to put more than one answer because, like we said, we all respond differently to change as well. Rita, is there anything you'd like to add while we're waiting for the poll to finish?
Well, I know in the last time we offered this webinar, most people wanted to find out as much information as possible before accepting change. And this can often be a barrier in KidsMatter because you won't really know how to do KidsMatter until you've done KidsMatter, and that's a 2-year process. So at some point, you're going to have to hold your nose and jump in. And yes, it is good to have some knowledge to start with, but this is where you've got your facilitator to hold your hand. You won't drown. You won't find yourself floundering. You just contact your facilitator and say, I don't know what to do next. And he or she will work with you to work out what your next best step is. And so this is one of the most supported processes of professional learning that I think is around in the whole of Australia, really. It's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. So then we've got lots of people who want to find out as much information as possible, and some who resist but eventually accept the change, and some people have identified that they do have some wariness around the impact and the implications of what change might bring.
And Amelia, I'd just like to say one more thing, given the responses we had, is that change also creates a feeling of chaos and uncertainty. And it wasn't until I studied change a bit more that I realised that this is actually normal and healthy. When change happens, we're supposed to feel uncomfortable. And so, not to be frightened of our discomfort, but go with it. And as I said, you've got a facilitator to support you.
Excellent. Yes, definitely. Which also leads to these KidsMatter Way symbols that we've got out, that notion that you talked about around feeling chaos, and sometimes you describe it, sometimes it can be a feeling of being overwhelmed. So our KidsMatter Way symbols that we would like people to really consider when they're looking at starting is around making a start, but to make it safe. Use conversation to do it, and the symbol that's already popped up tonight, the notion that there are many ways that we can learn. Is there anything you'd like to learn, add, Rita?
I know. Often services have, they want to do KidsMatter, but they do feel overwhelmed. I mean, there is so much information that is going to come with learning with KidsMatter, and I know I've been in that place too myself, where I just can't start something because the idea is too overwhelming. So I think it's one of the things that's really important is to keep remembering, why am I doing this? Why are we doing this? And to have trust in the process and trust in your facilitator to support you through the process. So there is an old saying that I often use when it's with a big job, which comes to mind, and it's how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So the same with KidsMatter. We just, take baby steps, and then you do feel safe. You do have the conversations, and you do have many ways of learning.
Definitely, and it is really about taking those steps, talking about them, and reflecting on them as well. So another tip that we have for making it happen, and we've mentioned this word facilitator a few times tonight, but we really do encourage people to be in contact with facilitators as much as possible, because they are a great connector to both the learning but also the reflective practices and other participating services as well. So this is an example that's up on the screen where a service had identified that there were a few roadblocks that were putting their KidsMatter journey, sort of slowing it down, holding it up a little bit. And they described this person that came in, their white knight on a laptop rather than a charger. It was actually their facilitator had come along. The facilitator was accessible and calm and knowledgeable and used a very can-do approach that re-inspired them. The facilitator also put them in contact with another KidsMatter service, so another service that had actually undertaken professional learning and continuing to implement the continuous improvement processes that KidsMatter was all about. So for her, the getting moving again with KidsMatter was all about that connection. So that's a fantastic story that we all strive for as part of the KidsMatter team, to support people and be their white knights wherever possible. So to do this, we connect with you regularly, so we connect via email. We also offer a variety of support and mentoring meetings that are hosted by facilitators. So they may be facilitator with an individual service or as a group of services coming together as well. And part of that is around a networking events as well, because we find that the more you can connect with other people and have conversations about things that you are doing, the practices that you put in place that have a mental health lens and have an intention to support mental health and wellbeing, sharing those things with other people can help grow each other's learning, but also achieve the aim that we have of improving the wellbeing of all children as well. We've also got a number of social media platforms that people connect on, and Rita mentioned earlier that some people use closed Facebook posts, closed Facebook groups to actually do the reflective practice. And we have a very active Facebook channel as well, so you can always share information that we provide on there with the rest of your team, with your communities as well. We keep them in very simple messages and clear. There's a shared thinking blog, which is a great place to get the practical how-tos of what KidsMatter is about and how to do KidsMatter, but also it's another great place to get the stories of what services are actually doing, and educators do contribute quite regularly. So as a KidsMatter participant, we'd love to hear your stories as you undertake that too. And then we've got Twitter as well, which operates in a similar way to Facebook, but it's a way to spread the news and the positive mental health messages that we have. Rita, is there anything else you would like to add around that?
So, just in terms of support, I've been had quite a few network meetings, and they're fantastic when 2 or 3 or 4 services get together. And I had two great ones I remember well. One was we were talking about educator mental health and wellbeing, and we shared with each other all the ways we supported ourselves and our teams. And then another one we shared about strategies for social emotional development for children, and it was really exciting and rich to hear the conversation going along without me needing to really say anything. It was like the educators and directors were actually supporting each other. And then I remember another time when I was talking to a service, and they were using the 8 ways, which you want to find out more about that, you go onto our website, the Aboriginal 8 ways images for tracking some of the approaches they had with children. And then I was suggesting that they actually, at the end of the term or after 6 months, they actually mark off which of the 8 ways they were using the most, and 8 ways of knowing, being and doing. and have a look at which ones they weren't using. And so in that sort of way, when we're talking with directors and services, we can actually add value to what they're doing and help them to go a little bit of a step further. So, so there's support everywhere.
Definitely. And I think particularly from those networking meetings, there can be all sorts of connections that grow and continue throughout after those events as well.
Yes, that's right.
Thanks for sharing those, Rita. We've been talking about networking events and support meetings, and these are a great time to check in with the KidsMatter team and to talk about what you've been doing. And this could actually be part of the process to ask questions, but it can also be a time to celebrate, to take stock of where you are and how you feel about where you are. It can be an opportunity to grow as well. And part of that is about acknowledging what you've already done and considering how you would continue to do that or whether you would improve it, and also celebrating. So these check-in points are a time where you can actually say, yep, we finished this part of the professional learning and we're ready to shift on to a new spot, a new part of it. And as you finish each professional learning topic, we will, once you've been in contact with the team and talked about what you've done and how you've carried it out, certificates for each professional learning topic are available as well. And we have a few other tools as well that can help plan and monitor and also document everything that you do. And one of those tools is our framework implementation tool, which is something that we'll explore in either a getting started event or in one of your first check-ins that you have with a member of the KidsMatter team. So again, we've got these KidsMatter Way symbols up, which is effectively what I've talked about. It's around acknowledging where you are and what you're doing and how you feel about that, and then seeing what opportunities there are to grow. And that growth can be as a team, as individuals, as communities. And you can support the growth of other communities when you attend those networking events as well. And at the end of the day, it's around acknowledging and considering and celebrating the big changes, but also the little small ones. And sometimes by checking in, you can actually, someone else can help you notice some of those smaller ones that you didn't potentially see. Is there anything you'd like to add a bit there, Rita?
I like the grow image, because what I've seen over and over again is individuals and services and communities grow through engagement with KidsMatter. And as I said earlier, change and growth isn't always that comfortable, but it has great benefits. And one of the things I often have to remind services to do is acknowledge, consider, and celebrate. We're not used to celebrating our gains and our successes in our culture, and it's a really important thing to do so that we really value the effort that we've put in and value the gains that we've made.
Yeah. And sometimes that celebrating might be about the changes in relationships that we've had, which brings me to our summary. So we've taken you on a bit of a journey tonight, and we've looked at a lot of areas that you'll probably take a few key things away, and you might have some more questions afterwards. So please get in contact if you do have continued questions. So tonight we've looked at how important relationships are and also how they can be a benefit in undertaking KidsMatter, but also to mental health and wellbeing across an early childhood community. We've covered some of the facts and details about costs, what it's like being online and different ways that you can be online. We've talked a little bit about the plan, do, review structure of KidsMatter and the vision and the aim of KidsMatter and how it actually is a continuous improvement process. We've considered 5 different ways that you can actually choose to follow when you go through the professional learning, or things that 5 ways that you might want to mix and match up a little bit as well. So there were a few tips as well. Rita, do you want to summarise what the tips were?
Yes. You caught me out on that one. You caught me out on that one, but the tips that I've got. Beg your pardon, Amelia?
The first one I reckon would be about the team.
Yeah, thinking about your team. So it's always easier to do something with a buddy. So tips for getting going and getting started. and we talk about having a leadership team. And so we need someone to champion KidsMatter in your service, and it may be you, but it's always good to do it with someone else. And if it's a small service, maybe the whole of your 5 educators will be on your leadership team, and if it's a large service, it would be a smaller group. It can be a director, an educational leader, a parent, a community member. So anyone can be on that leadership team that will really activate KidsMatter in your service. You also want to talk to your whole of service team about KidsMatter and really consult with them to bring them along and make it a whole of service decision that you're going to participate with KidsMatter. And an easy way to do that is actually to show them one of the videos, maybe the What is Mental Health video, or What is KidsMatter video, so they've got some idea of what. Recording of this? Or the recording of the webinar. Video 7 minutes, the webinar is an hour. One that suits you. But yeah, this will be available. Thanks, Amelia. And also making the most of your facilitator and the KidsMatter team. If you don't quite know what to do and you haven't been allocated a facilitator, Amelia will give you a contact so that you can get back in touch with us and get some support if you feel like you need it to move ahead. But basically check in regularly and often because we're here to help you and help you to make it work for you.
Definitely. And find the check-in work that works for you as well, the check-in option. So we've got a quick poll. We've done a bit of a summary of all the different things that we've covered tonight. So out of the information that you received tonight, what do you think you will take away to talk with your team about? Are there any particular things that we've got listed here that you think is the most important for actually getting your team on board, or the information that they would like to know the most? So yes, the benefits of KidsMatter for children, families, educators and communities. Yes, the details of how the initiative is structured. And I think when you're talking with your team around the details of how it's structured and the time it will take, it's important to communicate this is something that is flexible and we can make it work for us. That's probably the big step in that thing. Yeah,
I think the key about the structure and the time is that you as a service will decide on how that's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. And what we will learn about. Yeah, so it's a bit of a mix across the board. So thanks everyone. So we'll just stop that time. Now, the next step that we're looking at today, you've attended an Essentials webinar. So Rita and I, we both talked about how going back and checking with your team is a really important step to progressing further with the professional learning. So check with your team, get on board about when you want to start, how you want to start, then register your interest in starting the professional learning with us. So after the webinar, you will be sent information about how to connect, but we can also pop that up in the chat now for you. So around how to register your learning, register to start. So that's just a form that you fill in. Then once you've registered your learning, you'll be invited to go to a Getting Started event. So some of you may have already registered for the Getting Started event because some of the information that we've been sending out to you all has the steps outlined for you already. But that's when you actually go, and when you go to the Getting Started event, whether it's online or in a workshop, you'll actually walk away with 2 of your professional learning topics started and some plans for how you bring the rest of the team on board with you and support them in learning along those topics as well. So they're the next steps. You remember, contact us via email or on our Getting Started contact form, and we can answer any questions that you might have as well. So, got a quick question now again for you. Where to from here? What are your initial thoughts after attending tonight's webinar about how you and your team will be progressing with KidsMatter Early Childhood? So we pop those links up in the chat for you. Thanks for that, Janelle. So lots of people are having a bit more of a think and taking it back to their organisation. Yes, and it's really important to have those conversations. And as Rita said, sometimes it's about watching a couple of videos. If you go to the Start the Experience, the KidsMatter Experience section of the website, you will have those videos, the 2 videos we suggest that you can show the people, and they're about 6 or 7 minutes each. So in about 15 minutes you can give people a really good overview of what KidsMatter is all about. And then once you've made that decision, it might be about showing parts of this recording or the whole recording to your team as well, particularly the stuff around the different approaches that you might want to take. So going to your Getting Started event with that information in your mind could be really useful as well. Is there anything you'd like to add, Rita?
I just noticed that, there's someone who's ready to go now, which is great. No, just as you said, just the importance of really bringing your whole team along, or a majority of your team along. Sometimes you find people who aren't ready, and give them time to come along in their own time. But if you've got the majority of the team ready to go, then go for it.
Yeah, and I think it's important when we're thinking about whether the whole team's ready or not. It's important to remember that just like everyone responds to change differently and reacts to change differently, everyone undertakes professional learning in different ways too. So if we feel that someone may not be as active or as engaged as what we are, you can't always judge by the outside what people's intentions are around that learning either. So some people might seem like they're not actively participating at all, but then come out with all sorts of information. We see that in children as well, don't we?
So, but Amelia, my take-home message would be that if you want to improve educator wellbeing and job satisfaction, and you want to improve mental health outcomes for children, then KidsMatter is the way to go. We've got we had an evaluation of the pilot, and we've seen evidence all along the way that I've never had a service that completed the professional learning and went, oh God, that was a waste of time. They all just go, fantastic, it was amazing. We could never go back to doing things that we were doing the way we used to do them. And these weren't bad services; these were all good services. We're so much happier now. So I really encourage you to to give it a go. It's fantastic.
There's not much. There's lots of things that having the KidsMatter framework behind you supports. Sometimes it's around that whole notion of I've done things a certain way before, but I've never really understood why I've done it. But it provides some mental health language around why these things happen, and sometimes it can be something as simple as the welcoming, having some mental health language to put behind that can be really useful. I guess my take-home message is that whole notion around we're supporting children's mental health and wellbeing through improving and embracing continuous learning of ourselves. So I think it's about embracing the notion that KidsMatter is a continuous learning process, that we never actually finish. We can continue to learn and grow and develop in different ways, and KidsMatter provides a great structure in the whole Plan Do review process. So we're coming up to the last few minutes, so I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for participating tonight, to remind you that you can keep in contact with us via email, via Facebook, Twitter, and also on our Shared Thinking blog. Other educators love it when blogs that they've written get some comments at the bottom, so feel free to go and check out some of those blogs as well and make some comments about how they've helped you reflect on your practices and processes at your place. Another reminder that we will be sending out certificates and links to the recording. They'll probably come as separate emails, but you will be getting a link to the recording relatively soon, and the certificates will be probably in about 3 or 4 days, and the certificates you'll receive within a week. So take KidsMatter back to your team, find out where you're all at as far as registering to start your professional learning, and then come along and see us either online or at one of our workshops to get started together as a team. So thank you, everyone. Rita, are there any final messages that you'd like to say? We will be keeping, sorry, one more thing. I just had another thought, then I'll let you say your one thing. We'll be keeping the chat lines open a little bit. So if you have a few questions or anything after the webinar, we will be here for about 5 minutes or so. So we'll be able to respond to your questions via chat. Rita, you've got 30 seconds.
I just want to say thanks to everyone for attending, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at one of the Getting Started with KidsMatter events.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, and thanks for helping us grow Healthy Minds. See you at Getting Started.
Bye.